Hi guys, welcome to Thela Fashion. I do not want to waste anybody's time, so let's just get straight into this tutorial. On today's video, I'm making a ruched butterfly skirt, and these are the measurements that we're going to be using today. I have labeled here: number 1, the waist circumference; number 2, the hip circumference; number 3, the full length; and number 4, the waist to hip length. And these are measurements you would normally take when you're drafting like a pencil skirt, but we would manipulate this to form a ruched butterfly skirt eventually. So let's get on to drafting now. First measurement I'm taking on the pattern paper is 1/2 inch, and this would be the seam allowance at the top. So now we are going to take our full length and multiply it by 2, because we're going to be ruching it, so it has to be longer than your normal length. Then we're also going to subtract 1 inch at the top for the band, and you can see my 1 inch mark on my tape rule is directly on that red line that we drew earlier. And then I'm just going to measure my full length, mark it out, and I'm also going to add 1/2 inch allowance at the bottom. So now I'm going to take my waist circumference measurement, divide it by 4, and just place and mark it out. I am not going to add any seam allowance here. So now I am going to take my waist to hip length and add 2 inches to it. So let's say, for instance, your waist to hip length is 8 inches. Instead of you to mark out 8 inches, you're going to actually mark out 10 inches now. And that is because by the time you ruch the skirt, it is going to move to the normal 8 inches position it's supposed to be. So now I'm going to take the hip circumference and divide it by 4, and I'm also going to add 1 inch to it just to make it free at that point, to give it the full ruched effect. And then I'm just going to mark what I get on the hip line. So whatever measurements I finally get at the hip, I'm going to measure throughout the length of the rest of the skirt. So next I'm going to be making the extensions at the side, and I'm taking 6.5 inches at the hip line. So I'm just going to measure 6.5 inches and just mark that, make a straight line throughout the skirt. And thankfully that was the length of my pattern paper, so I just left it like that. You can make it shorter, you can make it longer, depending on how long you want the extensions to be. I'll be taking mine at 6.5 inches. So I went ahead to cut the pattern on fabric, and I cut it on fold. So now I'm just going to transfer this onto the fabric again so I could cut out the back piece. And I'm going to cut out 2 sides of the back piece, just like the front, with the zip allowance at the middle. And I'm taking 1 inch for the zip allowance. If you're enjoying the video so far, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this video. So now I'm just going to try to transfer these measurements to the other side of the skirt, because it's going to be a guide for me while I'm sewing. So now I can make the band, and for its length I am taking my waist measurement plus 2 inches, and then for the width of the band I'm going to be measuring 3 inches. I'm taking 3 inches for the width of the band because I'm going to fold it over, and by the time I fold it over I'm going to get 1.5 inch, and by the time I sew the 1.5 inch to the skirt, we're going to get the initial 1 inch that we planned for. So now we're done creating all the pieces, we can get on to sewing. Alright, so here we have actually drawn out the exact silhouette of the skirt, the exact measurements on the fabric. and I also notch the edges for guidance. So what I'm going to do now is sew in the half an inch seam allowance we took earlier at the top, but it will be only at the two sides and not the middle. So after folding the two sides, you can already see how it looks like now, and this is how it looks also for the back. I did the same thing for the back. So what I'm going to do now is fold the bottom of it, but for the bottom I'll be folding the entire length of it. So I'll be doing the same thing I did at the top for the bottom. For the bottom is going to be the entire length, and I'll do the same thing for the back. So this is how it's looking now after sewing the bottom of the skirt. So what I'm going to do now is join the two sides of the back piece together. I'm going to add the zip later on, but for now I'm just going to join the two sides of the back piece together. Alright guys, so what I'm doing now is I'm going to sew with a loose stitch up to the point where the zip is going to stop, and then after that I'm going to sew with a tight stitch. So I'm sewing with a loose stitch first because I'm later going to open up that stitch so I can attach the zip. So now I'm just going to transfer the measurement to the front of the fabric, because we did it earlier at the back of the fabric, but it actually needs to be on the front because that's where we'll be sewing on. So I'm using a chalk to draw on the measurements, and I'm using a chalk because I want it to wash off easily. So I'm going to just go around with pins to secure this together, and then I'm going to use my chalk to draw out the measurement. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine to sew on the lines that I just drew out. So what I'm going to do now is sew a line throughout the length of the skirt from the notch directly beside the notch that we made earlier. Then I'm going to sew another line beside the first line to create a tunnel for the drawstring to pass through, or if you want an elastic, it will be the tunnel where the elastic would pass through. So this is my band, and I have ironed it. I folded it and ironed it flat so it will be easier to sew. So I'm just going to loosen up the space I created for the zip so I can attach the band, and I would sew one side of the band round the waist and then turn it over and fold and sew on top of the band to finally attach the band. So how I'm placing the bands to sew is the right side of the band is facing the wrong side of the skirt, and then I'm going to sew and then turn it over and fold and then sew on top. So I'll be making two straps, and the width of the strap is 1 inch. The length of the strap should be about 2 to 3 inches longer than the length of your skirt. Alright guys, so now I am just going to stitch the top part of the tunnel so the straps stay in place. So this is the final product, and the skirt is totally adjustable. You could adjust the length according to how you want it to look like. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment down below, and just show this video some love if you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.